Hey everyone, this is I guess you call it a virtual unboxing video for the November Humble Monthly. There's quite a mixed bag of games this time round, so I'm going to go through each one in turn, give you a quick overview of the game. I've only had a short time to play each one, so I don't have an in-depth review for them, but I'll give my first impressions and I'll put up some clips of me playing, and hopefully you can get an idea of what each game's about. So this month's games in alphabetical order were Besiege, Legend of Grimrock II, Lethal League, Saints Row 4, SanctuaryRPG Black Edition, TowerFall Ascension, and, knowing that I'm going to pronounce this one completely wrong, Valkyria Chronicles. So let's jump straight in. So, first up we have Besiege. This is a fairly well-known game where you have to build vehicles of various kinds to complete objectives, usually related to blowing things up. It was released in January of this year, and on Steam the reviews are overwhelmingly positive, with just under 13,000 reviews submitted. That is a massive number. As is standard for this sort of sandbox game, sometimes you just build a simple vehicle, maybe add a weapon to it, possibly get blown up by a landmine you didn't notice. Other times you may add even more weapons because you can't be bothered aiming. Inevitably though, you end up making a structure that is just 90% weapons, because how else are you going to kill absolutely everything on the map? You all know the old adage about brute force: if it's not working, you're not using enough of it. There are a huge number of videos of Besiege online already, showing plenty of absolutely ridiculous contraptions that people have made, so I won't spend too long on it here. Just suffice to say that if you like sandbox games of this type, then it should definitely be on your list. The easiest way to describe Legend of Grimrock II is a dungeon crawler RPG, but from a first-person perspective. Now, this game was released in October 2014 and currently holds a very positive rating on Steam based on just over 1,200 reviews. The game puts a bit of a different twist on the dungeon crawler RPG genre by having you control your party from a sort of aggregate first-person view. That is, there's an invisible grid on the ground as normal for a tile-based game, and your party moves around on it, but the camera is down on the ground showing you their viewpoint. This can be a little disorientating at first, as it takes some time to adjust to your view representing 4 actual characters with front and back ranks, and also you can only move within the grid system, meaning that you don't have the freedom that first-person perspective normally gives you. Unfortunately, I didn't get on well with this game. It starts off very slow, explains very little. Your characters start off in a cage, and it took some time before I realised that I'd given the stick that I was provided to a character in the back rank who couldn't hit the door with it. It's a very newbie mistake, but these things aren't pointed out to you in a way that makes them obvious at first. Also, combat felt slow and clunky. You just stand there trading blows in a very rigid fashion until your opponent's dead. There's very little in the way of tactics other than just clicking the buttons as soon as cooldowns end. It could just be completely automated. And finally, in my short playthrough, I reached a point where I was asked to stand in a circle and call out to the Guardians. Now, maybe I missed something, but calling out is not something that was ever mentioned as an action I can perform. At that point I had a choice between digging through the UI to try to find something that looked relevant or heading off to find a walkthrough, and that just didn't seem worthwhile. So overall a disappointing first experience. Given the positive reception it's had though, I suspect there's a good game under there somewhere, but maybe I'm just the wrong audience for it, or maybe it's assumed that you're going to be using a tutorial or such, I don't know. So next up is Lethal League, and this is basically what happens when you cross baseball and arena combat. As you might expect, the goal is to hit your opponent with the ball. Lethal League was released in August 2014, and overall the reviews are fairly good. On Steam it has an overwhelmingly positive rating with nearly 2,500 reviews. On Metacritic it has 82 reviews, a score of 7.3. You can play with up to 4 players, that's locally and online, in free-for-all or team modes. Quick matches are pretty much dead outside of peak hours it seems though. The number of users peaks at about 60 to 100 and dips to below 20. I tried to record a quick match for this video, but I had limited time and I gave up after about 5 minutes waiting. Apparently it has a fairly nice community though, and you can always pop into the Steam chat to find opponents. There seems to always be people in there. There are offline modes that give you an idea of how the game plays, except for the training mode. Now for some reason this just dumps you into an empty arena with nothing at all to do except hit the ball against a wall until you get bored. You can't even die because you're the last player to hit the ball and that makes you immune to it. The challenge mode on the other hand seems to be the core of the offline gameplay experience, pitting you against AI opponents in a variety of match types. It includes both 1v1 and team games. The AI does make some silly mistakes as you'd expect, that's pretty par for the course, but it can surprise you if you get complacent. The team matches get a bit crazy, it can be quite easy to lose track of where you are and where the ball is if you're a new player like me. The lack of colour contrast doesn't really help with that, it's a bit of an issue. Overall I'd say that Lethal League looks like it could be quite a fun and frantic game. Definitely worth checking out if it looks like your sort of thing. So I'm reasonably sure I don't need to talk much about Saints Row 4. Right now it has a very positive rating on Steam from 34,000 reviews. That is a lot of reviews. It also has an 86 rating from 45 critics on Metacritic and a 7.4 from just under 1,500 users. You may have noticed by now that basically every game in this bundle has that sort of score, so it shouldn't be a surprise. Anyway, as I say, most of you are going to know about the insanity that is this game, but just in case you don't, I'll say that the first mission starts off as a generic FPS where you just go around shooting terrorists, and then it ends with you riding an ICBM into the air so that you can rip parts off of it and disable it while Aerosmith plays in the background, after which you backflip off the rocket, come crashing down into the White House and land in the president's seat, and the end of mission unlocks are the Adoration of America and Presidency of the United States. Now I don't know about you, but I'm usually happy with my end of mission unlocks being a new skin or weapon. And this is before you even get to the character creator, and things are only going to escalate from there. Now the character creator itself has a whole range of skin colours, like far more than in other games. You can see my lovely assistant modelling one off to the side there. It has all the fine-tuning options you could ever want, and for some reason it removes the character's underwear at one point, and it seems to be specifically so that it can censor things. Now that's the sort of small detail that shows you just how random this game gets. So anyway, if you like shooters but you're bored of serious games like COD Blops, then just give it a go. Next up is SanctuaryRPG, and specifically the Black Edition of that game. This is currently listed as overwhelmingly positive on Steam based on 665 reviews, and is in the style of an old school text-based RPG. Everything is text-based, including animation sequences, and this is a game that can take quite a bit of time to get into, as despite the simple interface it is quite deep, with a large number of character types and build options, weapons, and so on, and a number of alignment and type systems that will also impact your stats. Your attacks can be built into combos and they have a variety of status effects that they can inflict or remove. Basically this is a game that could absorb a lot of your time. As reflected by the reviews, the game won't be for everyone, but if this is your sort of thing then this is definitely one to be checking out. Next up we have TowerFall Ascension. It's a neat little arena combat game pitting you against your friends, or alternatively against waves of undead foes in a co-op mode. This was released in March of 2014, on PC at least, and currently on Steam has a very positive rating based on just over 1,000 reviews. Metacritic gives it a score of 87 with a user score of 6.6. The game was designed as a couch party game with up to 4 local players, and to me seems like a lot of fun if a little slow paced in the single player. I haven't had an opportunity to try out multiplayer yet, but it's definitely something I'm going to look to. Now the retro graphics might not be for everyone of course, but they work for me, I don't mind that sort of thing, and it's definitely enough contrast to make it easy to track everything on the screen. I tend to find that as the graphics get more complex and more realistic in games, they tend to lose some of that contrast that you really need. One of the features I do really enjoy is the wall jumping. It makes you feel like a complete badass when you can buy multiple jumps with a kill at the end. Now importantly, and not immediately obvious unfortunately, the level does wrap at the edges. I spent a fair bit of time avoiding the pits at the bottom, assuming I'd die if I fell in, but instead you get teleported to the top of the level and just drop back in again. This did mean that I had several arrows that I didn't realise I could retrieve and just assumed there was a jumping technique I hadn't found yet. And given that you have a limited number of arrows to use, that did sort of hinder me a bit. Also worth mentioning are the trials, which give you an arena with a number of dummies placed around it, and it's basically a challenge to hit each of those dummies with an arrow in the shortest amount of time you can. This again is quite fun. If all you've got is a single player, then being able to compete against your own times is quite necessary for the replayability. So overall the game seems like a lot of fun. I am going to have to try to round up some people for local multiplayer, as the Steam forums are saying that's where it really shines. But for now I'm happy messing around in single player with the trials and the wave based rounds. So next up is Valkyria Chronicles, which I'm still absolutely sure I'm saying completely wrongly. This game has you defending your homeland against an invading army with a mix of real-time, turn-based combat. I'll get to that in a second. But first the reviews. It got very positive on Steam with just about 4,500 reviews, 86 on Metacritic from 60 critics, and 8.7 from 410 users. So my first impression of the game was that it was a lazy console port, and that's unfortunate. It's also unfortunate that that's not uncommon. It's got all the usual markers. There's a separate configuration program for the graphics options, there's no mouse support in the menus, no anti-aliasing on the intro movie, and if you're using the keyboard it's got some really weird key assignments like F to open the menu and space to select items on the menu. One feature that did help it out in this regard though is the seamless switching of the control schemes. So if you press any key on your keyboard or controller, it will instantly switch over all the on-screen prompts to reflect that control scheme, which I found to be pretty neat. So porting aside, I found the game pretty fun to play even in the limited time I had. Switching between the third-person movement, first-person auto-shooting thing, and the overarching turn-based systems all a little strange at first, but I did get into it. I did see one point of imbalance though, in that the enemies can shoot at you while you move, but you can't do the same back at them. The graphics are all in this fairly nice sort of hand-drawn style, which is actually quite pleasant when you're coming from a whole load of very realistic games or cel-shaded games. And it's just generally quite nice to look at, especially with the colour palette they've chosen. It's all very easy on the eyes. Overall I'd say it's worth checking out, and I do have it on good authority that it gets very tactical as the levels progress, and it gets to be quite a deep game in that way. Anyway, that's all for this month. Hopefully I've given you a reasonable overview of each of the games in the bundle. As usual, if you have any comments, feel free to leave them in the comments section below or on Twitter, where you can find me at Kemp Plays. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next month.